and welcome to the Keep It Cool podcast. I'm Yifei Huang.
And I'm Vivian Patterson.
In every episode, we surface stories about how individuals in our Bay Area communities are contributing to climate action. Today, we are going to talk about food.
Hey, Faye. I just had some Snobby Joes for dinner the other day. Have you ever heard of this?
Snobby. Sloppy?
Snobby Joes is a play on Sloppy Joes, but instead of beef, they're made out of red lentils and they taste amazing.
That's so funny. So why is it renamed to Snobby?
I guess it's maybe really self-aware that you don't want to eat meat, or maybe you're above eating meat, but I do think it's really funny.
I love the name. Yeah. Yeah, it does get me thinking about some other plant-based alternatives that have funny names. I guess the one that comes to mind is tofurkey.
Yes, I just had some of that the other day. That's great.
And then there's flag, which is like a flax seed-based egg. So not quite egg, but flag.
That's such a funny sounding name.
I think my favorite one is definitely soy sages.
It legitimately sounds like you just have a Brooklyn accent and you're trying to say sausages. Sausages. Give me some of them sausages.
But I guess, hilarious names aside, I think it's an indicator that these plant-based alternatives, they really are popular now. They're becoming more and more mainstream. More and more people that we know are trying these out. And one of the reasons that people do this is because it helps with climate change, this topic that you and I both really care about. So I'm wondering at the same time, as these things are becoming more popular, how much of a difference are they actually making in this problem of climate change?
Food has a really, really big role to play in our carbon footprint.
This is Nicole Angiel. She's the Director of Sustainability at Acterra, a nonprofit that is based in Palo Alto. Their main goal is to focus on what people can do locally to address current environmental problems.
We're all about building community, building coalitions, and finding really creative solutions for the many challenges that we face. These solutions are things that people can do every day very easily, and they can have a huge, huge impact. There's a study by UC Berkeley, and it was funded part by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And they studied the emissions by sector, and the average Bay Area household carbon footprint has about 33% of their footprint from transportation and about 19% from food. And I think that's surprising to a lot of people. They think, oh, it's all in my car, and it's all in my car and it's in my heating and heating my home, but it's actually not. And if you take out the air travel from that transportation bucket, it's almost equivalent to the emissions from a gas-powered car.
There has been this recent push towards eating plant-based foods because it's better for the environment. Is this actually true? And how much better are plant-based foods for climate change?
All animal-based foods have a much higher carbon footprint than plant-based foods. So that includes cheese, milk, and other dairy products, chicken, eggs, pork, seafood, all of it. Beef, for example, has about a 60 times greater carbon footprint than a similar size portion of beans.
I just want to clarify, beef is 60 times worse or 60% worse than plant-based?
60 times. 60
Wow.
Times. Yeah.
That's a lot of times.
Yeah. So what it boils down to is that ruminants are mammals and they have extra compartments in their stomachs. So cows, sheep, goats, buffalo, these are all ruminants. And they collect their food in the rumen, this large compartment in their stomach. This is how they digest their food. And while it's fermenting and digesting, along with the microbes that are in there, methane gas is created. And the cows have this buildup of methane gas and they start burping it out. And methane is a super, super powerful greenhouse gas. When we measure greenhouse gases, we measure those in CO2 equivalents. 1 ton of methane is like 25 tons of CO2 equivalents. So you're looking at this huge production of methane gas from the dairy industry and from the beef and lamb.
Okay, so beef is primarily bad for the environment because cows emit methane gas from their stomachs. But what about other animals? What about poultry or eggs?
So poultry, it's got about a 5 times smaller carbon footprint than beef, but it's still 10 times greater than beans. So those beans, if we get back to the beans.
So, Vivian, to put this into perspective, a group at the University of Oxford did some research, and they found that if you group all meat-based products into one category, and you compare that to the other category of plant-based foods, the first category uses about 85% of farmland, so this is about 5/6 of all farmland, contributes to about 60% of CO2 emissions, while only providing about 37% of all protein and less than 20% of our calories.
That is actually really surprising because if 37% of our protein comes from meats, that means that 2/3 of our protein comes from plants already.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of plants as protein-rich sources, but they really are, like Nicole referred to with the beans.
Right.
Yeah, and the other surprising thing is that meats really only account for 20% of our calories, despite taking up more than half of the emissions, 2/3 of our emissions almost. That's a crazy discrepancy. But it's not just CO2 emissions. Animal agriculture can have rippling effects that cannot be quantified with just CO2.
When you're producing animals for food, there are a huge array of environmental problems with animal agriculture. There's excessive land use, there's water use, there's water and air pollution, there's the overuse of antibiotics, which leads to resistance, which is a whole nother problem. And there's the mistreatment of animals, which is another problem. And then on top of all of that, which has come to light, of course, during COVID, is the huge amount of racial and social justice issues that there are with animal agriculture. So it's just really ridden with problems.
So I guess in summary, meat is much worse than plants. You said beef was 60 times worse than beans, significant amount. And also food itself, the category contributes to 20% of Bay Area households' greenhouse gas emissions, which is also significant. But we can't just stop eating, right? Like we're humans, we need food to keep us alive. So what do you suggest people who are worried about climate change do if they're searching for solutions?
Yeah, so you don't have to stop eating, and you don't have to stop eating meat entirely. You don't have to go vegetarian or vegan. What we promote at Acterra is a plant-forward diet, eating lots and lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes. There are, lentils and black beans and pinto beans and all that good stuff. And then just moving meat and dairy to the side of your plate or even off your plate entirely. Think of meat like a garnish rather than the centerpiece of your plate. Think about each meal as an opportunity to focus mainly or even entirely on plants. It's not all or nothing. You don't have to become vegetarian or vegan, but you can make these changes and take steps that are at a comfortable level for you. And, you've probably heard of the Meatless Monday. The Meatless
No, we
Monday.
haven't. Could you explain that?
Okay, yeah, Meatless Monday. It actually began during World War I. And the goal back then was to ask families to eat less meat at home to be able to send it overseas to the troops. And actually, back at that time, it was Meatless Tuesdays. But I guess Meatless Mondays had a better ring to it. In more recent times, this campaign has grown. I think it started in 2003, and it became this global campaign for better health for people and planet. And the idea is just to skip eating meat on Mondays. Just do it one day a week, not such a big deal. And it's been a really, really big success. It's been used in schools, hospitals, colleges, and workplaces, because it's easy to say, hey, today our menu is meatless. It's Monday, we're going meatless one day a week. And people can get used to that idea and not feel deprived, or it's a slow shift. And then once they get used to it, they might decide, oh, I might even add another day because I feel pretty good. And, I know this is good for me, and it's better for the planet.
That's really interesting. Do you know how much less CO2 would a person emit if they subscribe to Meatless Mondays? How much actual impact would they have?
This organization, Meatless Monday, produces some great statistics. And if you eat one less serving of beef each Monday for 1 year, that will save about 348 miles worth of emissions. So that's just something that you can tangibly feel and understand, and get excited about. And they have other environmental statistics again, too. Like, so producing just 1/4 pound burger uses 10 bathtubs full of water. So, it's just kind of an obscene amount of water just to make one hamburger. So any little thing that a person can do really makes a difference.
Okay, at this point, I'm pretty convinced that plant-based diets are a great way to contribute to climate action based on what Nicole is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I feel like a hypocrite sometimes saying that I am a climate advocate while also eating meat. Like, I have to admit that I do still eat meat.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think Nicole also mentioned just any small changes we can take is definitely a good thing, but I definitely see what you're saying. It is better to just transition fully to a plant-based diet if we're going to be the most environmentally friendly that we can be.
Yeah, I think right now, really, what I'm asking myself is, why haven't I done it? And I'm curious whether you've put in some thought to that.
Yeah, mentally, it seems difficult for me to transition to fully change my diet in this way. And also, my mother has expressed in the past that vegans are almost certainly not getting enough protein, or, how can you live without eating meat?
I love how moms still say things like that when you're like 30 years old.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you're totally right. There is sort of this activation energy, I think, that comes with transitioning to a fully plant-based diet. Most of it is honestly like, am I getting enough of these nutrients? I think for most people, it's protein. They worry about not getting enough protein from meats. For me personally, I think it's iron. I have been anemic before. But we also asked Nicole this question, and she actually had a different perspective on this.
It is absolutely healthy to eat a plant-forward diet. It is absolutely healthy to eat a vegetarian diet and even a vegan diet. And nutritionists will tell you that the healthiest diets out there are the Mediterranean diet and the vegetarian diet. Those are kind of well-known facts that those are the best ways to stay healthy. And most nutritionists will say, if you're eating mostly whole foods, whole grains, veggies, fruits, these pulses, beans, lentils, as long as you're eating enough calories for your body mass and your age and activity level, there is nothing to worry about. You've got all of those nutrients in there.
To get another perspective, I also interviewed my roommate Allison, who has been vegan for a while now and transitioned to veganism specifically because she wanted a healthier diet.
I am Allison Dear. I am currently a researcher at Stanford School of Medicine, and I went to Duke for undergrad and I majored in cellular molecular biology. I am vegan and I have been vegan for about 4 years, but yeah, I'm really passionate about veganism and trying to spread information, accurate information, scientific information about veganism, so that's why I'm here.
Allison, could you tell us how you became vegan?
I started my journey towards veganism when I was 18. About halfway through my first semester, I got what is termed the freshman plague. And I really had to think about, what am I putting into my body? Is it good for my body? And one of the first things that I started with is looking into meat. It was pretty clear through the research that meat was not the healthiest thing I could be eating, so I decided to transition away from eating meat. When I started, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to be vegan. It was more just, I'm trying to get healthier, and so that was kind of the first thing that I decided to cut out.
How did you decide that meat was the thing to cut out for a healthier diet?
So I actually have a number of notes here that I compiled because I am a science nerd at heart. And there is at this point, a pretty overwhelming amount of evidence that consumption of red meat and processed meat is highly correlated with risk of cancer. And they have shown that certain chemical compounds in red meat and processed meat are carcinogens, which means that they increase your risk of getting cancer. These particular chemicals are present when you cook red meat and when you cure or smoke or otherwise process meat.
Okay, Allison. So personally, I'm worried about not getting enough nutrients in a transition to a vegan diet. What's your experience with that?
Personally, when I was eating animal products, I really never thought about any of that. I never thought, how much protein am I getting? Am I getting enough calcium? Things like that. But now that I'm vegan, I'm thinking about these things and I'm realizing, oh, I do get all of these nutrients that I need to get, and probably like more sometimes. So yeah, I haven't really ever had any issues. I've never been anemic or anything like that. It's pretty easy to get iron if you just know the plant sources, leafy greens mostly.
Okay, Vivian. So I think we talked a lot to Allison and Nicole about these like high level ideas of you are getting enough nutrients as long as you're eating enough. But I am a more numbers person, and I actually looked up some numbers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's going to help people have a better mental mapping if they've never been on a plant-based diet before. So I'm really excited about this.
So the two main things I think we're concerned about is protein and iron. So let's talk about protein first. Nicole said that usually what you want for protein is 0.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight. For a typical American who weighs 140 pounds, that's about 51 grams of protein. So I went through all the foods and I tried to map it out to how much of each food you would need to get that daily dose of protein. It's about 7 ounces of beef and 7 ounces of chicken. So those are the meats.
And that's like half a steak? Or that's more like one steak, right?
How much is a steak? I don't eat steak, really.
That's a good question. A 16-ounce steak is like huge. So this is like a normal size steak, maybe.
Okay. All right. So I guess one dinner of steak, you should be able to get your daily protein. But in the plant world, this translates to about 2.5 cups of black beans, 2.8 cups of cooked lentils. It's about 2.5 cups of tofu. Tofu's actually very good. It's 1 cup of tofu is about 40% of your daily protein needs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love tofu, so this is very good news for me. 7 cups of quinoa. I think that's a lot, right? 7.
That sounds like a lot of quinoa, but I guess you're also going to be eating these other things with quinoa. So quinoa just has a little extra protein, so you don't necessarily need to eat like all of your protein in tofu.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the last thing that I looked up was nuts. So it's about 2.5 cups of most nuts will get you your daily protein intake.
That's perfect. A lot of people, myself included, like to snack on nuts in the afternoon. So that's a really easy way of getting more protein.
Or even granola bars. They have a lot of nuts in it. So one granola bar could give you quite a lot of your daily protein needs. Protein is in other foods as well. So cereals, fortified cereals will often have protein. Cooked oatmeal will also have protein.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's about 8 cups of oatmeal for your daily protein intake, which is a lot,
Wow.
but it still has some, right? Is what I'm trying to say. Like all of these things sort of added together, and then you snack on some nuts, right? And then you're basically there.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you could skip that 7-ounce steak of beef and choose from a combination of all these other things. Another thing that people might be concerned about, I know I have a lot of friends who like to take protein powder for extra protein. And there are plant-based protein powders. They're usually pea-based.
Oh.
And I've asked around my friends to see whether they've considered this. And actually, I found out some of them do take pea-based protein powder. And it's because regular protein powder makes them break out and plant-based ones don't. So added benefit of plant-based protein powder.
That's perfect. And all protein powders taste terrible, so you might as well go for the one that's more environmentally friendly.
Exactly. Building off of that, there's actually a lot of Olympic athletes who are eating plant-based diets. The one that really comes to mind is Venus Williams.
Wow.
Who eats a plant-based diet, and I mean, amazing athlete. So
Yeah.
the fact that she's doing this on a plant-based diet really says, yes, you can get enough protein.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Like would never have imagined that performance athletes could be totally plant-based. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's all these preconceptions we grew up with. So the second nutrient that I wanted to address was iron. Women need more iron than men. Men need about 8 milligrams of iron per day, and women who menstruate will need about 18 milligrams, so almost twice, more than twice the amount. Based on that, I just went on the women quota.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I try to find for each type of food how much of that food we would need to eat in order to get our daily intake of iron. So for the 18 milligram daily intake of iron, that is equal to about 18 ounces of beef.
Wait. 18 ounces?
Yeah. I was waiting for a reaction there.
So we established that a 16-ounce steak is gigantic. And so you would need to eat like that much steak plus a little bit more to get the iron that you need?
Yes, that is correct, Vivian.
That's completely crazy.
Yeah, I was pretty blown away by that too, because one of the things that I equate with iron intake is, when I think I need more iron, I need more red meats.
Right.
But actually, I need like a lot of red meats. I definitely learned something there. The next one I think is even crazier, which is I looked into chicken. And apparently you need about 40 ounces of chicken for your daily iron intake.
I don't even understand how many ounces of chicken that is. Can we talk about it in like pounds or like some other unit?
So 40 ounces is equivalent to exactly 2.5 pounds, 2.5 pounds of chicken.
Oh, that's so much. That is like a gross amount of chicken to be eating in one sitting. I feel like when I think I need more iron, I need more meat. So where do people actually get their iron from?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I looked into the plant side of this, the numbers were a lot more reasonable. So for your 18 milligrams of iron, that is equivalent to about 3 cups of lentils.
Oh, that's so reasonable.
Very reasonable. That's 3 cups of cooked lentils. So each serving of each cup of lentil is about 6.6 milligrams of iron. For tofu, it's about 2.5 cups of tofu. So each cup of tofu is about 7 milligrams.
I'm learning today that tofu is just a powerhouse food.
Yes, everybody should eat more tofu, even though it has a funny name. It is great. Anyway, spinach is high in iron as well. It's about 4.8 cups for your daily iron intake. Also, we talked about oatmeal. So we're looking at about 6 cups of cooked oatmeal, which is still a lot. But you also see iron in things like fortified foods like cereals. Like a slice of bread will probably have about 1 milligram, right? So you get little bits of it here and there throughout your daily meals. Mm-hmm. But the most interesting thing is a great source of iron is actually dark chocolate.
No.
Yes.
That's awesome. So you're telling me I should definitely incorporate as much dark chocolate as I need to satisfy my iron needs.
Exactly. 1 ounce of chocolate is about 3.3 milligrams of iron. I buy these giant chocolate chunks at Trader Joe's called the Pound Plus. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so using those, 3 squares, just 3 squares of those, it's about 30% of your daily iron intake already.
Wow, that's fantastic news because when those are in the pantry, I have way more than 3 squares in a day. So we're doing great.
Yeah, you're probably getting enough iron.
Actually, Yifei, this makes a lot of sense because in the end, chocolate just comes from a different kind of bean. It's just a bean.
Oh my God, yeah, you're right. I would have never thought about that, but right, it is a bean. Beans are great. We talked about how beans are a great source of nutrients, and this just corroborates that. So, protein and iron are not a problem, but Nicole does say that there is one nutrient that you cannot get from a plant-based diet.
The only thing that you cannot get from plants is vitamin B12.
I talked to Allison about how she deals with this.
One of the ways that vegans get a lot of B12 is fortified foods such as like breakfast cereal, things like that, and nutritional yeast, which is a kind of Parmesan cheese-esque substitute. It tastes really great. So I have never had a problem with vitamin B12 deficiency because I eat a lot of nutritional yeast as like a seasoning basically on my food. Would highly recommend. You can get it at Trader Joe's.
Oh yeah, I want that.
Yes, I'm happy to spread the word about nooch, as we call it.
Nooch? How do you spell that?
Nooch.
That's so funny. I love that name.
Yeah.
It sounds so cute. So Vivian, this is the interesting part. As I talked to Allison more about the details of being vegan, starting with nooch, I began to think that maybe I should just try being vegan for a week and seeing how it goes. Let's talk again in a week and I will report back.
So, Yifei, here we are a week later, and I am super curious about your week of trying to be vegan. How was it actually purchasing things from the grocery store? Logistically, this sounds different than the way I usually shop, so how's that changed for you?
Yeah, exactly. It's one thing to decide to be vegan. It's a totally different thing to actually go and do it. But what I found to be super helpful was that because I knew Allison, my roommate who is vegan, I just took her to the grocery store with me and we literally walked all the aisles of Trader Joe's. We stopped at all the items that she was excited about. So for example, she showed me exactly where nooch was. I didn't have to go and look for it. Just having Allison show me around just made it so much easier to try this new diet. So listeners, if you know people who are vegan or vegetarian and you are curious about starting it yourself, go to the grocery store with them. Ask them to show you what they get.
That makes sense. So, what groceries did you actually buy?
Yeah. First of all, I was surprised to find that so many of the things that I already get are vegan. Like, obviously, fruits and vegetables, dark chocolate. Some of my normal snacks are vegan, like hummus and carrots and nuts, granola bars. But there were quite a few foods that I don't normally get. For example, for breakfast, instead of regular milk and yogurt, we got almond milk and yogurt made from nuts. For some of the snacks, we got the vegan equivalents. So, for example, at Trader Joe's, we got vegan chocolate chip cookies, which were great. Would recommend. Instead of fish and meat, we got tofu, lentils, canned beans, and specific plant-based substitutes. So, for example, we got Impossible Burger. We also got these things called chickenless mandarin orange morsels, which mimic chicken. And we got some plant-based sausage patties and just egg, which is a plant-based egg scramble. And we also just got food to make our own plant-based substitutes. So, for example, we got canned jackfruit, which you can toss barbecue sauce into and cook, and it's like pulled pork, which is cool. Yeah, and of course, we got newt.
Woo!
Yes, which definitely lived up to its hype. I literally started putting it in everything. For some dishes, like this creamy pasta dish that I made, the newt definitely adds a cheesy flavor to it. But for others, it kind of just acts like salt.
Nice. So overall, it seemed like it was a good experience?
Yeah, it was really fun. I ended up adding a lot of foods to my diet that I wouldn't normally add, including dessert, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't normally buy ice cream for myself, but at Allison's suggestion, I tried Ben & Jerry's plant-based ice cream. And that was kind of cool. Like, I wouldn't have had it otherwise, I think. And it kind of gets me thinking about this thing that Allison said about how going vegan expanded her perception of food.
When you're not relying on meat and cheese to be the backbone of your dish, I think you tend to branch out a little bit more. And I know I've discovered a lot of like really great fruits and vegetables that I probably never would have eaten. And I've definitely eaten a lot more culturally varied food, because a lot of other cultures seem to have very vegan-friendly food, particularly East Asian and South Asian food, but there's a lot of African food that's pretty much vegan or already vegan as well. In a lot of other countries, meat is not as popular for an ingredient as it is in the US. A lot of other cultures have realized that meat is expensive, meat is sometimes hard to come by, and you can make really great food without needing to use meat. So yeah, I've definitely been able to branch out and experience a lot of other really amazing dishes from other cultures.
I think another way to think about this is that it's a game. So you add these constraints to the situation. You're trying to construct something with the resources that you do have. So it was really fun. And I would actually encourage people to try just that for the novelty of it and see what you come across, what you stumble upon.
Yeah, I feel like that is a really cool way to reframe instead of, I can't have this or I can't have that. It feels more like, let's see how creative I can get with my diet. And so it sounds like you had a great trial week. All in all, do you think you'll modify your lifestyle moving forward?
Yeah, so now knowing the effects of diet on climate change and having experienced veganism for a week, I think there are definitely some things that I will permanently change about my diet. First, I'm going to cut out all beef-based foods with the exception, I will have to say, with the exception of an occasional brie cheese. I love almond milk now. I love Impossible Burger. But there really isn't a good plant-based substitute for cheese. So I will probably keep that as my only beef-based food.
That's not bad.
This experience has shifted my perception in that I don't feel like I have to eat meat every day. So I've incorporated a lot more tofu, nuts, and lentils into my diet. And also meat is honestly it's harder to cook. So I'm not complaining that much. But I do have to admit that I haven't taken meat out completely. I don't buy raw lamb meats anymore. And I'm working on migrating sort of my regular pre-prepared meals to completely plant-based ones. I still, though, get some fish. I still get eggs. I still get some charcuterie. And I don't eat at restaurants much, but I don't think I'm quite ready yet to cut meat out of all my restaurant choices. I guess the way I see it is that, I would love to be completely plant-based one day, but it's a work in progress.
And I think that's fine. I think This goes back to what Nicole was saying about how it's not all or nothing and that it can be a gradual transition process.
Plant forward is a great way to go. You can find what's comfortable for you and take it to the extent that feels good.
So, what do you think, Vivian? Do you think you'll try to be more plant-based?
I think it feels a little harder being married to someone who loves brisket, but my partner has agreed to try out Meatless Mondays, and so we're going to start with that and see how it goes. Also, since I do maybe 60% of the cooking throughout the week, I typically make an executive decision for those meals, and he'll just eat whatever is on the table. So, I will see if I can ease him into smaller portions of meat and more fully plant-based meals.
That sounds great. Let me know how it goes.
If you like this podcast, share it with a friend. Heck, maybe even grab that friend and try going vegan for a week together, because everything is better with support.
There are other things that you can do. We have a website, keepingitcoolpodcast.com, all one word. You can visit there to get more information about what we talked about today. Also, Acterra is hosting a Meatless May Challenge, so go to their website, acterra.org, that is acterra.org, for more information. Thank you to Nicole Angiel and Allison Dear for their insights on food and climate. Thank you to Stephanie Lai, who designed our logo, and Deep Talk for the original theme music. And lastly, this wouldn't be possible without our wonderful team at the Keeping It Cool podcast. That's Vivian Patterson, Wendy Cho, and me, Yifei Huang. Stay tuned for our next episode.